Welcome back. President Trump directing his cabinet to cut 5% of their budgets. This comes just 2 days after the Trump administration announced a $780 billion budget deficit for fiscal year 2018. That would be up 17% from 2017. Here's what the president told Stuart Varney about the budget earlier this week.
We're going to do a lot of cutting of the budget also, by the way, which I know is going to make you happy, but we're going to do a lot of cutting.
You're going to cut some spending?
We are. We're going to cut spending, absolutely. And
that's
we had to do...
tough order, Mr. President.
It's not as tough as you think. And frankly, there's a lot of fat in there, but we had to get the military done last time. You know, President Obama let it go. And I could say beyond President Obama, the military was in terrible shape. Now we got $700 billion approved.
Now, the increase in the deficit is coming largely because of flat revenue coupled with increased spending, obviously. Joining us right now for reaction is the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget President, Maya McGuinness, and the Wall Street Journal's editorial page deputy editor and Fox News contributor, James Freeman. Great to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Maya, let me kick this off with you. I was reading a lot about your research in terms of this deficit, and you're quite worried. Tell us why.
Well, I am quite worried because we shouldn't have a deficit anywhere near this large size during a time of such strong economic growth. Ideally, what you want to have is deficits that you run if the economy is really weak, which it is not right now, and surpluses when the economy is strong. But we have been borrowing for every new initiative that we've done, and that's grown our deficit and it's grown our debt. And it really weakens the foundation that our economy is built on right now.
And Maya, you say these deficits are going to soon top $1 trillion and never come back down unless Congress acts. What do you want them to do specifically, Maya?
Well, right. And this is an unsustainable course in that our deficits and our debt are now growing faster than the economy every single year. And what we should do, and we should do now while the economy is strong, is put in place a plan that would bring the debt back down so it's not growing faster than the economy. That means looking at all parts of the budgets. I would start with the parts that are the biggest problem areas, and those are Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Nobody wants to talk about them, but our health and retirement programs are growing too fast. And then clearly, if you're going to spend more, which Congress continues to vote that we should do, we're going to need to raise the revenues to cover that. So I would look at getting rid of a lot of the tax breaks that currently exist in the tax code that we didn't get rid of as part of tax reform, but I think overall would have been a desirable part of tax reform.
Yeah, this is one of those issues, James, where you have this sort of creeping worry, but it doesn't impact people's or the zeitgeist, you know, on that specific day. Your thoughts on the impact of all of this?
Yeah, this debt will have to be paid. It's fortunate we have a growing economy. I think that's critical to affording this debt. But as Maya said, I would agree, those major entitlement programs have to be reined in at some point. The fastest growing entitlement over the last year, looking at this budget, was Obamacare. Not as big as the other ones yet, but growing very fast. So I think you look back at the failure to repeal that. That was an opportunity to start reining in the spending monster. If the president is talking about 5% cuts, that's wonderful, but it needs to extend government-wide, not just that discretionary domestic part of it, if he wants to get a real cut in.
You make a really good point there in terms of Obamacare. You're probably not going to see the president or the Congress come out in an election year and say, hey, I'm going to cut your Social Security right now.
Not popular. But that's a big driver, along with interest payments on the debt. Social Security, another category with a big increase this year.
Are markets focused on this, James?
I think it's a long term. And it's also, as we look around the world, we're still in that kind of best house in a crummy neighborhood zone in terms of you look at so many governments that are more indebted. But this is a problem. We've more than doubled the debt over the last decade. This year's numbers weren't as bad as those 4 straight trillion-dollar deficits to start the Obama administration, but still bad. And I would say this is the big failing so far of the Trump administration, is not to take a serious whack at spending. Yeah,
you wonder, Maya, if the administration or the Congress, the Republicans, do well in the midterm elections. I mean, it's anybody's guess at this point. If they come back and they say, okay, we're going to actually rein in entitlements now, because you said it, that's where much of the money is.
Yeah, but I don't know what was stopping them for the past 2 years. Unfortunately, we had Republicans who had long been talking about the importance of entitlement reform, and then they had the opportunity in their budgets through reconciliation, which allows them to do this really without any problem, to make a lot of improvements and fixes to the entitlement programs, and they did nothing. So I'm really worried about, where the education and honesty about the fact that we have to fix these programs has gone. I'd also want to point out that the fastest growing part of the budget is interest on the debt, faster than any of our entitlement programs. And that, again, goes to show how problematic sort of this fiscal unsustainable situation is. And even though the president has asked for 5% reductions from all of the different agencies in the budget, that's off of a huge spending increase that we just had this past year. There was bipartisan support to bust the spending caps, bust the budget. We added $320 billion to the discretionary parts of our budget, and a 5% reduction off of that is still actually an increase. So I don't think anybody's yet talking about the serious measures that are going to improve this fiscal situation. And what that means is we're weakening our economy for the long term and handing a huge bill on to the next generation of voters and our kids, and it's just not what this country's supposed to be doing to build a strong and sound economy.
Yeah, and you make a good point about interest rates and about the cost of holding this debt, because right now, James, the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates. That could be one of the reasons that the president has been so critical of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, that's right. I think he doesn't want interest rates impeding growth, but he's also concerned. He now is responsible for that $21 trillion of debt and paying it, and it gets a lot harder as these rates go up. I do think we should keep in mind this is not hopeless, that entitlements can be reformed. We go back to this past Congress, it was one vote. The late Senator John McCain, if he had voted yes to repealing Obamacare, that would have happened, and that would have been a big step toward entitlement reform.
When do you think this resonates with people, Maya? You did a report on basically how this debt and deficit impacts individuals. Are people worried about this? Do they understand the ramifications?
I think one of the most difficult things about this issue is having it connect directly to people's lives. It is not a kitchen table issue. It is in my house. Right. My kids don't appreciate that. But it is not the kind of things that most of us sit around and worry about with health care bills and the skyrocketing cost of education and challenges of retirement and normal challenges. But the truth is that this is connected in every way to kind of the economic health and prosperity of our economy and our families. And so I do think we need an educator in chief on why this issue matters so much, and really talk directly to voters about how if we continue to borrow our way, we're not going to borrow our way to prosperity. We're going to really jeopardize the economy, and that's going to create much more pain instead of the kind of growth that we are trying to build right now in a sustained way.
We'll leave it there and keep following it. Maya, I hope you'll join us soon on the morning show. Mornings with Maria. Maya McGinnis, good to see you. James Freeman, always a pleasure.